Considering Manny Pacquiao's age and activity, he hasn't fought for over 2 years, that's bad for any age. If you're 42 and you haven't fought in over 2 years, that's got a disaster written all over it. So the fact Pacquiao even looked competitive at the world level against a bigger man, a guy who knows how to box, that deserves a little round of applause itself. He may not have the W next to his name for that performance. He may not have a belt to go home to the Philippines with. But just what he was able to do, it's still defying what's expected with boxing, what's usually possible. Not many people are still fighting in their 40s. Those that are tend to look terrible. And if you're a guy who started at such a low weight, like Manny did back in the 90s, you've had so many tough fights, and you're still competitive against a bigger man at welterweight. It's just like, it's still incredible. But in order to have defeated a guy like Yordenis Ugas, a guy who's bigger and knows how to box, Pacquiao would have needed the afterburners of old. Now, often when we talk about Pacquiao, other people, commentators, promoters, they mention the angles, the speed, the power. But what always enabled those factors to come into play that was Pacquiao's fighting spirit was the footwork. It's the foundation, literally, in boxing, and Pacquiao's quick feet, the way he was able to feint with his feet, probe at different angles, like something out of nature, right? Like a mongoose against the snake, like the tarantula hawk trying to lay its eggs. You see it in nature. They have the speed to probe at different angles until the perfect window is there, and then they go in. That's what Pacquiao used to do. That's how he floored Marquez 3 times in their first fight. People joke that Ricky Hatton fought with his face, but Pacquiao was able to get rid of him so quickly because he was able to capitalize so quickly on the windows that were there. He couldn't do it this time. The first round was a perfect example. Ugas knew the assault was coming. The classic combinations were like Pacquiao mixes up straight with slightly looped left hands. Still good combinations, still going to give a lot of trouble to most people. He knew what was coming. He battened down the hatches with just a basic defense, and that was good enough. There were times when Pacquiao fell over himself because the hands now are working quicker than the legs. His trunk isn't underneath him. The hand speed is still incredible for a man of his age. There was a moment where he actually missed a combination, but the speed at which the punches came, I went, holy crap. For a 42-year-old, that is unbelievable. Conditioning, of course, incredible for his age. But he already saw when he was getting set. So all the things that used to be devastating about Pacquiao, it started with the feet and getting you out of position. He can't really get you out of position. He did a couple of times earlier in the fight, his mid-combination feint, where he stops, he makes a move, and then he usually goes in and lands his follow-up. It didn't work. Ugas knew what was going on straight away. Basic defense, basic jab, create space. You keep missing, I keep hitting you. Again, he needed the quick feet and the endless stamina. The likes of a Joshua Clottey, of course, was a bit of a different style to Ugas. Not as good a boxer, but he couldn't even respond back in 2010 because Pacquiao's stamina, just the way he harassed him, he forced him into defense. There was no other option. Pacquiao in his prime would have been countering over the jab with the quick right hook. He would have been more willing to throw the left uppercut, which we didn't see a lot of, to try and hurt him. More willing to throw when he did, and just made him second guess himself a lot more. Because Pacquiao isn't a natural boxer. His fighting spirit was the speed, was overwhelming you, always being around you, which made boxers just not know what to do. He doesn't have it anymore. He's still good enough to make you work, because Ugas couldn't fancy Dan his way through this fight. He had to combine gritting his teeth with being consistent and keeping himself in ring center, which probably wasn't easy. But Pacquiao wasn't able to create that bonfire that he used to. Wasn't able, there were no, you could give Pacquiao, I think, 3, maybe 4 rounds. I probably gave him 3 but it said its own story. He only kind of maybe edged rounds. Pacquiao had no moments in this fight. He even had little moments against Mayweather. He had no moments against Ugas where you thought, right, he's trying to assert his dominance now. Because it was just like Ugas got a little bit marked, but he knew what was coming. Simple defense, simple jab. And he had great variety with his right hand, didn't he? Sometimes he threw it with the top two knuckles over the top, then it was in the side. And at a moment in the last round, he reached. He got an extra stretch, almost like Hagler back in the day, to reach Pacquiao, and he did, and pinged his chin. And Pacquiao got a bit marked up in that last round. Amazing he can still take those shots at his age. I think having watched that, had he fought Spence, it probably would have been the ugly exit for a legend, which we've seen too many times down the year. If Pacquiao wants to have a farewell fight in the Philippines, great. Maybe not a bad idea against a lower level guy. Give something to his fans again. But he just doesn't have it right now, does he? I don't want to see the ugly exit we've seen, going back to Joe Louis getting smashed out of the ropes by Rocky Marciano. Had he fought Spence, a guy who pursues you more than Ugas, Ugas was quite happy to remain in the ring centre and only turned it on a bit in the last round. Spence actively hunts you, pushes you back, has a lot of physical strength, which has never been a strong suit of Manny. He probably would have busted up and got Pacquiao out of there. And it would have made it ugly. We don't want to see that. I mean, from one perspective, it's a win that Pacquiao even lasted the distance there and didn't look terrible. And in the post-fight interview, I thought it was almost like a little bit emotional because it might be this guy's last fight. Certainly at the top level. And I was more of an Eric Morales fan back in the day. I loved it when Morales beat Pacquiao back in 2005. But still, Pacquiao has been a big part of my boxing life. I'm sure I've got tapes of his still recorded on VHS. That's how far back it goes. As I say, this guy was a world champ in the 90s. And he's still around and just fought still at the world level. He's a special part of boxing. And so if he wants to have his farewell fight in the Philippines, that might not be a bad idea. Why not? At the world level, it's very probably the end for the Pacman. Legs aren't there. The fact he didn't get like a bad stoppage, as I say, it's a mini victory in itself. Ugas shines a little bit more. Some people think he deserved it against Porter. Now, does that give more credence to that idea going forward? I don't know. Maybe he will fight Spence. It is his big moment. But the bigger story really is that Manny Pacquiao very well may be done with his unbelievable career. And if that's the case, I salute a genuine legend of the ring.